convey something meaningful. But what happens when in fact the truth turns into well-told lies? Over the last 300 years, news professionals have developed a largely unwritten code of principles and values to fulfill the function of providing news. The indirect knowledge by which people come to form their opinions about the world. To understand this better, we should go back to November 1963, more exactly to JFK assassination. John Kennedy murder had a big impact all over the world. Lyndon Johnson, who was named president a few days after the incident, wanted to know what was really happening on 10,000 miles across the globe. So he sent the Defense Secretary Robert McNamara to Saigon, finding the truth. On his way back, McNamara gave a press conference at Tan Sao Nut Airport, reporting that the South Vietnamese forces made a great progress. When he landed at Andrews Air Force Base the next day, he gave another press conference saying pretty much the same thing. 8 years later, New York Times and Washington Post published a secret government written story about what the government really knew and thought about the Vietnam War. This document, called Pentagon Papers, revealed what McNamara truly reported to the president. Things were going to hell in Vietnam. All in all, it was a complete repudiation of everything he had said in the two public conferences.
As a journalist, it is their job to tell and spread the truth. However, the definition of the truth is still confusion to some.
Hello, I'm Jasmine Luxamana, and today I'm with Luke Bonds. Hi.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, what do you think the truth in journalism is?
The truth in journalism? Okay, well, I would start...
Journalists were interviewed for a survey by the Pew Research Centre for the People and the Committee of Concerned Journalists what their definition of the truth was. 100% of the journalists answered, getting all the facts right. Truthfulness creates, in effect, a sense of security that grows from awareness and is at the essence of the news. In the beginning there was the Word. This is the opening line of the Gospel of St. John in the New Testament. This sends a message to all that the basic desire for truthfulness is so powerful, and the evidence suggests it is innate. In the Middle Ages, monks held that there was actually a hierarchy of truth. Highest levels were messages that told us about the fate of the universe, such as whether heaven existed. Next came moral truth, which taught us how to live. Allegorical truth, which taught the moral stories. The least important was the liberal truth, which the theorists said was usually empty of meaning and irrelevant.
Truth. The first principle of journalism is disinterested pursuit of truth, is ultimately what sets it apart from all other forms of communication. However, by the beginning of the 20th century, journalists were beginning to realize that accuracy and truth, realism and reality, were not so easily identified. Walter Lippmann, an American public intellectual and reporter, even stated that news and truth are not the same thing. And in 1938, journalism textbooks were beginning to question how truthful news could be.
Hello, and today we are outside of Westminster, where inside there is rioting and looting, and it's really kicking off. And
over the next 50 years, journalistic truth becomes the holy grail in journalism.
Mirror images of each other.
The mind sees what it chooses to see.
With constant debate and argument to define the truth in journalism. Sometimes guided by political ideology, and sometimes guided by postmodern deconstructionist academics. Philosophical discussion of whether truth really exists, like epistemological skepticism, which has pervaded every aspect of our intellectual life, founder with semantics, and ends up in a muddle. One reason for this is that conversation is usually not grounded in the real world. Others have argued that journalists themselves have never been very clear about what they mean by truthness. The conventional explanation by journalists about how they get at the truth tend to be quick responses drawn from interviews or speeches or words from marketing slogan, and often rely on crude metaphors. This explanation makes journalists seem passive, mere recorders of events rather than selectors or editors. The failure by journalists to articulate what they do leaves citizens all the more suspicious and that the press is either deluding itself or hiding something. Truth, it seems, is too complicated for us to pursue, or perhaps it doesn't exist since we are all subjective individuals. Where does that leave journalism? Is the word truth now something adequate for everyday conversation, but that doesn't hold up to your scrutiny? The term has become so misunderstood and battered, it must get the discussion off track. Despite all that, there is little doubt that journalists believe themselves to be engaged in pursuing truth, not just free speech or commerce. We have to be, but this is what society requires of us.
It is important to remember that journalism exists in a social context. We teach our children rules, history, physics, and biology. All of these truths are subject to revision, but we operate by them in the meantime because they are necessary and they work. This is what journalism is after, a practical or functional form of truth.
But journalism can and must pursue truth in a sense by which we can operate day to day. In 1947, Hutchins' Commission warned about the danger of publishing accounts that are factually correct but substantially untrue. It is no longer enough to report the fact truthfully. It is now necessary to report the truth about fact.
In the first hours of an event, when being accurate is most difficult, it is perhaps more important. People tend to ask themselves, is it a threat to me? Is it good for me? Is it something that I should be concerned about?
Despite all this, today, journalists still believe in the importance of telling the truth. 7 in 10 national and local journalists are confident that they can develop a professional method to cover events in a disinterested and fair way. Still, we see noticeable skepticism.
Perhaps because of this uncertainty, the conventional response in the so-called serious press to the new media culture has been that its place was to add more context and inspiration to the news, giving them more meaning. Rather than pushing to add context and inspiration, the press needs to concentrate on synthesis and verification.
As citizens encounter an ever-greater flow of data, they have more need for identifiable sources dedicated to verifying that information, highlighting what is important to know and filtering out what is not. Verification and synthesis become the backbone of the new gatekeeper role of the journalist. In short, the need for truth is greater, not less, in the new century, for the likelihood of untruth has become so much more prevalent. For that to occur, the next step is that journalists must make clear to whom they own their first loyalty. Bill Keller quotes, "Whether true objectivity is ever possible, I don't think that's what we